Welcome to already the sixth episode of the PLM Global Green Alliance, talking with PLM-related vendors. In the past, we talked with SAP, Autodesk, Dassault Systems, Systera, and Aras, and now we have the honor to talk with PTC. And I'm here together with my colleague in crime, Klaus Brettschneider from the PLM Global Alliance, and we talk with Dave Duncan and James Norman from PTC. So before we jump into PTC, Dave and James, let's first hear from you. What is your personal relation to sustainability, and how does it affect your daily life? Dave, shall I start with you?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, briefly, I might be dating myself here, but it started well before we knew about global warming. I mean, even as a child growing up in the 70s and near New York and Boston, I just never liked tailpipes to begin with, right? Just the smell and the smog and things like that. Didn't necessarily understand the scientific implications of it. But where it really hit home and where I gained my passion was when I was in the military. In the 90s, I was in Germany. And more and more, we had to deploy into regions for energy security. I mean, I was deployed in Bosnia, but the sister unit where a lot of my friends were across the street with Patriot missiles were deployed in Saudi Arabia in 1996. And we're right across the street from the Khyber barracks, when they were bombed. So, we knew people that were affected by that. And, the more I thought about it, it's like, wow, if we're doing a lot of this because we're burning too much oil and gas. And if we did a lot less, I think the world would be a nicer and safer place. And then, of course, it grew from there. There were much more reasons that were understood scientifically for caring about sustainability. But, initially it was for those reasons.
Right. Yeah, I understood the awareness was there in the 90 or 96 or before. But, and James, please introduce yourself. And
yeah, so I'd say similarly to Dave, I grew up in a very different climate. I grew up on a barrier island off the coast of Georgia and then New Orleans. So I grew up, taking care of sea turtles. My mom would take me to the beach and we do beach cleanup. So I got infatuated with nature pretty early on. And then I went to film school. I wanted to be a National Geographic cinematographer. And that didn't work out, obviously, because I'm sitting here talking to you guys today. But a friend of mine convinced me to take a hand at the hard sciences. So I ended up at the University of Georgia studying ecosystem ecology, which is really where that science was founded, and got pretty heavily into all things related to water and ocean conservation, and ended up doing Aesthetic Conservation International, and ended up in public policy for a few years in Congress as a fellow. And just more and more my passion for the outdoors, connected with my background in science and work in policy, just has continued to lead me down this path. Ended up in PTC at a pretty interesting time. About 12 years ago, was part of a sustainability startup that got acquired. So it's all sort of coming full circle once again, but it's been a long winding road. But yeah, for me, I'd say it started when I was a wee lad, and then it's never left me since.
yeah, because that was my question. How do you get up from ecological world into the world of PLM? How do you get there?
Yeah, I mean, the short line is that, basically we were trying to develop one of the first streamlined LCA tools that could be applied at scale for industry. And this was back in 2007, 2008.
Okay.
Then the recession happened. So, we had venture funding, but a lot of venture capital funding dried up during that time. And right as we were about to shut the lights off, PTC had an interest because they were involved in materials compliance at the time. So they wanted to expand their portfolio offering. But I think it was just honestly a little too early. I don't think that there was enough of there was general interest, and everyone was aware that it was important for the world and important to our customers, maybe intellectually. But there wasn't a lot of business drive yet for people to do substantive things with tools that we were trying to develop. So I think it was just too soon, too early. But I did a lot of industrial ecology after graduate school as well. So I sort of skipped over that because it's a very long story. But I got interested in feeling that the intersection of business and public policy was probably going to be the best shot that we had at solving the problem, after getting pretty frustrated with the nonprofit space for a few years. So decided to give my hand or try my hand in the private sector. And yeah, it's been up and down, but I feel like we've got a pretty good opportunity now globally. There are just so many trends pushing, whether it's PLM or any other, digital transformation effort to really drive these kinds of initiatives. I feel like the momentum and the need and the investment is finally here. So,
right. And as you mentioned, material compliance is often the first step for understanding LCA. Klaus, you
were you able to stay basically in this field through your career at PTC, or did you have to push a little bit to get back to it?
Yeah, so not really. Once the tool was sunset, I've worked in most corners of PTC and have tried to find a way to instill it in one form or another. So we have an internal employee resource group, and so that has filled the void to some extent. And we have a retail PLM tool that I worked in for a few years that has had more of a focus here, because that has permeated that industry more from, I'd say, brand reputation than substance for a number of years. So I was able to dabble in it, but no, I'd say, if I'm being perfectly transparent, it's really been the last year or so that we've seen globally just things really shift with like the SEC ruling and rules coming out of Europe that move beyond materials compliance into things related to carbon and other environmental issues that are really driving the focus of this. And as a result of that, that's really what's brought it back around for me at PTC.
And Dave, did you have to fight to get into this area, or were you selected?
I think I just got really lucky, to be honest. So I came across the PTC through a Servigistics acquisition. So I worked on the service end of the business for a while, and then ended up moving towards the PLM side. And for the previous couple of years, I was on our Atlas platform side, which does the integrations across the life cycle. So design, manufacture, service. So I was fortunate enough to get a broad perspective of PTC's offerings in the market. So when the position was posted, I put my name in for it, and I think it really helped that I was involved in the various product areas where sustainability permeates. So I sort of luckily fell into the role, if you will, but it's been super motivating and happy to be in it. It started October 1st.
Great.
So we both saw your connection. So now we're zooming in on PTC. How do you, I would say, inside the PTC treat sustainability, both as a company and towards your portfolio? What are the major trends and activities?
So I think, as James mentioned, if you asked us a year ago, like, how important has sustainability been for our customers? As a product manager, I probably talked to about 100 customers a year. Before a year ago, maybe 2 of them would mention sustainability in passing. But I would say starting early summertime last year, even before I was in this role was considered, almost every customer was coming with sustainability as a top 3 priority. It happened like a switch about 8-9 months ago. Well, not even, probably about 6 months ago. So now it's top of mind for everyone we talk to. I mean, obviously in a sustainability role, I'm coming at them with that context, but even before you reach that state. So areas where they're feeling pressure are investors, for sure. So it's top down from the CEO down to say, hey, there's green premiums for manufacturers that have targets to become more green and or pursue green products. Most of our customers are now pursuing both. And there's also a green premium that customers will pay for such a green product. And that's not just B2C, it's B2B as well, because it reduces, their scope 3, which, they're the OEMs and tier 1 suppliers are also measuring themselves against. So there's this wonderful supply chain and value chain pressure that's bringing all of these companies into sustainability practices in a much more rapid way than it was before. So I think the private industry pressures now of the supply chain and value chain are really almost universally driving manufacturers towards this.
And did you also notice a change in strategy within PTC?
Yes. So we've elevated sustainability as one of our top 3 corporate objectives. And one reason we did that this year is to make sure that we established the muscle memory within PTC to do that. So when I took on this role, I still don't have direct reports underneath me. I'm working with the various functions, but frankly, it's been easy. So anytime I ask someone in CAD or PLM or sales or marketing or wherever to say, hey, we're trying to move the dial and do some things with sustainability, who wants to help? Tons of hands are raised. As James mentioned, we have an ERG that has about 70 to 80 very active participants and hundreds of followers on it as well. So within PTC, there's a lot of energy and a lot of people volunteering to work on this. And frankly, we're finding a lot of folks that have strong sustainability backgrounds and passion that are contributing. I mean, in terms of strategy, that's a big question. I think a lot of that will unfold during the conversation today in terms of how we're looking at various parts of the life cycle and how PTC contributes to it. What we would do organically versus, what we do with integration partners. So I could answer all of that right now, but I think a lot of that will tease out, during the discussion this hour. James, do you have more to add?
No, I think that's a pretty good summary. I mean, again, it was a big focus back in, say, 2009, 2010. And then things just sort of didn't really stop, but I think momentum got lost because of the, coming out of the recession and other business pressures. It was deprioritized. I'd say not necessarily from a values perspective, but just from a business imperative perspective. But again, with some of the, the financial reporting requirements now that are coming out, I mean, that's the way that you look at anything in human history. You tie it to resources, and money being the main, global resource that we're all concerned about. It's what's really driving the focus. So today's point, yeah, from the CEO down, it is now a core imperative for the organization as well, both from what we can do for our customers as well as what we can do with our own organization to have an impact. So,
yeah. One thing I will add at a high level for strategy, though, is our intent is not to make a PTC sustainability product. Like, it won't be a new segment within our portfolio, but rather there's things that we need to do in CAD, PLM, IoT, augmented reality, service, as well as who our integration partners are in the full value chain, where we will surface or enhance or make data orchestration easier to make sustainable product decisions and actions. So it's pervasive across our existing portfolio of products, and we don't expect to make any new significant products that are completely dedicated to sustainability, but rather build it into the products that we offer.
Yeah, I think one of the points we discover and learn that it's not a product. I mean, and you can use the products for the wrong and for the good purpose. But one of the crucial points that also came from the interview, it's all about data. It's about creating visibility of what is happening, being data driven. That was one of the points that came out of all the interviews, and it's about collaboration. Right? You don't do it with a single thing. It's about networks of suppliers, organizations. Is that an area where you're focusing on too? James, I see you nodding yes. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I think core to our PLM strategy generally, like we see PLM as the backbone to digital thread, and that's a term now that's similar to digital transformation, has been commoditized to a certain extent. But I think PTC was one of the first to really use that term and to lean in to think about our portfolio to how we could enable digital twin, digital thread across the life cycle of a product and think about it in a closed loop way. So if you hang sustainability off of that, it fits very naturally into concepts like, circularity and life cycle thinking, not just cradle to gate, but cradle to cradle. And a lot of our offerings have been tailored with PLM being the backbone to drive that strategy, whether it's, connected products with IoT and AR coming back into service and driving, real field time or real field feedback into products in real time via PLM and CAD. It's been core to PTC's strategy now for close to a decade. So sustainability just becomes another, spoke in that wheel, or something else to hang off of that thread. It's less about a specific approach, because honestly, it's one of the things that I've seen in 20 years in this space is that, not in the PLM space, but in the sustainability space broadly, is that it's really been isolated more or less as a niche function, and it's usually been relegated to marketing and branding. Like, it's the sustainability teams, broadly speaking, are not integrated with engineering, with product management, with quality. They're speaking different languages. They're often speaking to different individuals in the supply chain, or if they're speaking to the same individuals, they're not having the same conversation, and they don't know who's having those conversations when. So using this concept of the digital thread and leveraging that to be a driver of allowing sustainability to be an integral part of the way that companies think about how they carry out their business, not just from a carbon footprint or just doing an LCA perspective, but Dave can speak well to this, but from the starting point of defining requirements, just requirements management, like that's not something you typically think about as a sustainability driver or a topic. But if you're not defining requirements up front, how do you expect it to get into the product downstream? So to Dave's point, there are lots of things that our existing tool set can do that can enable a whole range of sustainability initiatives that have nothing to do with needing to go and build another iteration of an LCA tool, for instance.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Dave, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Klaus.
Is there a specific focus? Sustainability, there are a lot of things under the hood, right? There's the discussion about emission, about circular economy, about so many things. Is there a specific focus PTC is putting in, or is it more driven out of the products where you're in with PLM and CAD, or how do you see that?
Yeah, there are a few areas. One of our primary focuses is helping engineers make sustainable decisions early on in the design process. I think we've all heard the general term, and it has some primary footnote to it as well, that roughly 80% of a product's environmental footprint is determined at design time, depending upon who we talk to. Sometimes we hear 85, sometimes we hear 65, but generally 80s in the middle. Most of our customers also think that number is only going to increase as designers have access to better data. So today, the status quo has been design your product, and then when you're near the end of it, run an LCA on it. And when that LCA comes back, it could have some information about how well or how poorly it's going to do based upon its current design. But at that stage of the design cycle, the cost to go back and make significant changes and potentially meet your release dates really limits how much you can change and readapt and rerun that. It's very expensive to do it with that type of iteration. So more and more we're trying to front load those decisions. So James called one out. One would be the OSLC tracing of sustainable requirements into the design process. Not only just the mechanics of the OSLC linking of those requirements, but offering pre-configured requirements packs to handle regulations around sustainable products, as well as best practice requirements. And there's global service integrators that already have some packs that do this today, which is nice that we're studying. Secondarily to that, for material selection, integrating with material databases for your make parts. Also for your make parts, being able to run generative design simulations early to lightweight, reduce weight on those. On the buy parts, something that's been around for a long time for materials compliance is punching out to databases like Silicon Expert or IHS Market or Octopart to be able to return hazmat, and more, they're expecting to get broader component coverage on footprint and other sustainability attributes that they're working on as well. So that'll even provide more data too. And roughly, simulation loops, and I use simulation loosely. So we talked about generative design being one type of simulation loop that could be run for lightweighting. There are manufacturing cost simulations like a priori in the market that now also cover footprint prediction, based upon your CAD models and your bills of materials. And that's good early information to get back for cost and footprint trade-off to make those decisions. ANSYS has some capabilities there too. So enabling that and be able to roll up that data in a way that a design engineer can understand and act on early and make an inexpensive early change is a big focus of it. So I'd say that's one. Second one is doubling down on modular design. For circular products, the name of the game is really not to take an end-of-life product and slice it into little pieces, recover the material, and make something new out of it. A better practice is if you can take significantly sized Legos or modules off of that end-of-life product and maybe restock some directly in a service parts warehouse, since it has a life that may be 1.5 or 2x of a normal end product, or others bring back and remanufacture for a new product. And then what's left, okay, maybe slice that up, melt it down, but recover that in a responsible way, either in your own factories or a secondary market. And there's a zillion other benefits for modular design beyond just circularity, but circularity really requires it. So adding some more emphasis there, as well as the disassembly instructions and analysis upfront in design.
One point on this, Dave, I think modularity, I fully agree with you. That's one of the key building blocks for a circular product and economy. What I often discover is when I talk about modularity with customers from the PLM function point of view, it's function features, and it's so much methodology. Is PTC also pushing any type of best practices or methodology besides the products? Or is this the partners that have the skills?
Yeah, James, add in if you have some comments here, but I would say that we haven't really descended on anything specific, but we're given circularity and modularity an extra study right now because of the additional implications, but we haven't settled on anything different yet. James, are you hearing anything from field customers on that?
The thing I'd say there is that it's a very good point, and the methodologies and approaches can be very different depending on the industry and the vertical. And we do a lot of things with PLM that are industry and vertical focused, and we're also undergoing a pretty substantial SaaS transformation that is going to not only require, but we're very much deciding to lean in to develop that offering in a way that comes with an intended set of use cases and best practices built into it that ideally over time will become more tailored to specific industries or verticals and methodologies that would make sense to particular types of customers. So I'd say in the short term, that's probably not something that you'll see from PTC quickly, but it is very much where I think we're oriented and going broadly with PLM, irrespective of modularity or configuration management or regulatory requirements. We're taking that approach broadly with how we're rolling out the next iteration of Windchill on SaaS. So it's definitely an approach that we'll be taking, but we want to do it intentionally and methodically, and it's going to take some time to sort that out over our customer base. And the notion of circularity is still pretty early and relatively intellectual, and there's a lot of just infrastructure requirements, not software infrastructure, but physical hard infrastructure that needs to still be put into place to really realize that the promise of that vision. So, some of this I imagine is going to evolve and change over time as well. Like the modularity, approaches and concepts that work today may not work in 5 to 10 years. So we're also trying to think about this in a way that we can approach it and be adaptive and evolve as capabilities and possibilities evolve for manufacturers in the way that they can approach this problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think exactly what you say. We are all looking to best practices, and we all are aware that we need education and experience to build best practices. And we are in a lot of early stages, because that's what most of the customers currently are asking about. Help us to make a sense of sustainability. How can it be implemented in my environment? And do you have any environments or any examples from customers that have done it? And here, by the way, I noticed you have a webinar next week with Cummins. I don't know if you are aware of it.
Yeah. I recommend you attend. It's a very good one. I think it's Steve Genter who's going to be on there, and he's well-respected engineer at Cummins, and he'll talk about, not only the mechanics of sustainable design, but also a lot of the human factors that are involved for, how did they motivate people to participate and, take pride in stripping footprint out of the design. So it'll be a good discussion.
Okay. So yeah, we are curious about that. And as you mentioned, Cummins, what do you see from your customers? Where are they? Are they in the phase of implementing? Are they in the phase of looking to what is happening? Yeah.
I was just in Germany in November, and it was eye-opening how advanced some of the German manufacturers are in terms of their thought, and when they started thinking about this heavily as well. But something that we have noticed, and this was very prevalent in Germany with a lot of sectors that historically just sell capital goods, like machine builders, for example, who want to get into circularity, right? They understand the need to do it for regulation and also for business reasons, ecological reasons. And they feel confident that they have a lot of the tools to be able to design modular and circular products. But that's only half the battle. The other half is solving the commercial hurdles, because today, as a machine builder, one that I was talking to is, hey, Dave, we sell this product to a factory or manufacturer, and outside of the warranty period, we really don't see it too much thereafter. They have their internal maintainers. Sure, we send them bulletins. They buy spare parts from us, but what happens to that product at the end of life? We have no control. We don't know if it's going into the ground or they're reselling to somebody else. No idea. So to be able to offer circular products and digital passports and these other things that are emerging, they have to relook their business models. And not necessarily at the extreme of full outcome product as a service, like Rolls-Royce and GE and other engine manufacturers have been done, but maybe iterations or steps in between that are more appropriate for their markets, like buyback options or extended warranties, extended service contracts, things like that are becoming top of mind.
Yeah, one other trend I'll mention too that I think is, I feel like has been maybe stuck for the last 10 years or so, is that people started getting into doing things like LCAs that Dave mentioned earlier, and they're very useful for helping instill a baseline of life cycle thinking in terms of how a company thinks about their products, but they tend to hit a wall pretty quickly. You mentioned data earlier. And the granularity of the information and the specificity of the information to their products and their supply chains that allow them to make decisions with confidence, and also hold that data and those metrics up to the other kinds of information that they use to drive decision making within a company. And I think that's been one of the challenges with getting, industrial sustainability or industrial ecology to scale, is that you can get a lot of different outcomes depending on assumptions and quality of data. And until we get to a place where there's more, you call it primary data, and the ability to transverse supply chains and collaborate and cooperate up and down that digital thread and that supply chain, that we're going to hit, sort of a limit of maybe get a little bit further than where we are today. But I think we need some new approaches, both from a a software and systems perspective, which is what we're really interested in PTC, as well as, you know, what Dave mentioned, some commercial and cultural changes in terms of how companies interact, particularly in the B2B space, which is where we heavily play, to really start seeing the proliferation of that data and the sharing of that data to make these kinds of initiatives more substantive, and to have confidence that we're moving the needle in the right direction and not just guessing based on, you know, assumptions and data that's not necessarily germane to our specific processes as an individual company or manufacturer.
Yeah. I think it's also one of the biggest challenges at the moment. So if you look into the sustainability and LCA calculation and things like this is a settled science basically, but it's all settled on assumptions and efficiency values and these kind of things. And to start now the discussion to say, actually, let's measure what we are talking about. I think a lot of people in this area are even scared what can be the result. And on the other hand, I think on the PLM side or on the ERP side, we do not have the data yet basically to prove how this is really happening on a scale level. So yeah, I think it's one of the biggest challenges to get over the hump. And I think one approach could also be to use artificial intelligence to basically bridge over it. Is there anything PTC is doing in this area? In this context?
Yes. Yeah. And it's a two-part story. The first part is kind of call it the Rosetta Stone, or the product twin, if you will. You know, as we all know, when you're finding information on the engineering side of the fence, we speak Greek. It's based upon configuration specification, right? It's end item part number, options, choices, manufacturing date for effectivity, data like that to be able to isolate to a given configuration. The term serial number is not known at all on the engineering side of the business. Now, on the operations side, they speak Egyptian. Everything is based upon a serial number. You have MES record, you have ERP records, you have field service records, CRM records, IoT alerts and sensors. They don't understand PLM configuration specification or variant specification. So in order to do this well, the first thing you need is that monkey in the middle, or Rosetta Stone, which would be a basic product twin, you know, not in the elaborate 3D space, but just a simple birth certificate, if you will, for the as-built would be the minimal viable product, which is for this serial number, what is its engineering interpretable variant specification? And then once you have that link, it's so much easier to link that performance data that's in the factory in the fields to the configuration data that's in engineering. So it can go both ways. So someone in a factory or in the field, if they want to see some configuration specific engineering sourced information, whether it's 3D instructions, etc., you know, they can make that call by knowing the serial number. Likewise, somebody on the engineering side who wants to do analysis to say, okay, I think I designed this product sustainably, but based upon these configuration parameters, how are real units performing? You can make a much more precise query to get that information. So, you know, that's step one. And then step two, because all of this data, once you have that, it's generally linked on IDs as opposed to fuzzy matches. You know, the types of compute that you need to do on structured data is much easier and much more achievable than, say, market sentiment off of unstructured data. So by making those data links has super promise for, you know, getting information where it needs to for analysis.
We are slowly running to the end of the session. I think we could do another hour in the details. I mean,
oh, for sure.
There's so much to discuss. I think interesting. I picked up. You mentioned modularity as a topic as crucial, where PLM could contribute. The data-driven, the data sources are crucial. If people want to learn more about PTC offerings, where could they go? What are the topics that you would recommend to study, or which websites? And we will publish them also in the blog post around this recording.
Yeah, great. So, and James, I'm sure you have a ton more to add here, but basically, if you go on our website today, we have a link to an innovators program where we have certain companies that we work with deeply on some of our latest offerings, and there's some of the early adopters of it and use the best practices. And there's a wealth of detailed interviews of exactly what problems they're trying to solve, exactly how they're using the products and what value they're getting out of them. And then, there's also some honest discussion about, hey, what's still left to do? Like what digital capabilities really don't exist in the market yet to handle some issues. So I'd recommend that. Secondly, in the wintertime, before the snow melts in the northern hemisphere here, we will have a refreshed sustainability page that will have links to those relevant clips from the innovation program as well as other information.
Okay. I just realized we heard the word digital thread, but we haven't heard the word digital twin. What is happening?
Okay, yeah. So digital twin is what I was discussing as the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
Right. That's as far as the basic digital twin is that cross-reference between the variant specification and the serial number, upon which you can hang a whole bunch of information, whether it's engineering source content or field activity that's usually order-based and keyed on serial number. Now, something that is going on there, I don't think we can talk much about it today, but the reason being is you may have heard that we're acquiring ServiceMax. That's expected to close in January. They have some capabilities that can enhance ours there, but I think we would have to have a follow-on session after close to discuss service as well as the sustainability implications of service and the digital twin. James and I have been purposely kind of quiet on it today because we're in the quiet period before close, but there's a whole bunch of information about digital twin and sustainability that I think we can have a follow-up on.
Exactly. That was yesterday a webinar from Tech Clarity on digital twins for sustainability. So it's really a hot topic. With that, Klaus, any questions from your point?
No, I think was very interesting. And if we can follow up next year or end of next year on the digital twin discussion and what the acquisition will bring for PTC and sustainability would be great.
Great. Yeah, happy to. So as soon as, the close of that transaction is announced, then, James and I are allowed to, talk about it more freely and happy to have a follow-on session.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, James, for, I would say, again, more insights in where PLM contributes to sustainability. I think people who are watching these episodes can use it as a good learning path, and we look forward to the additional materials and in-depth interviews in the near future.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Klaus. We enjoyed it. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.